Hey, hello everybody. Good evening and welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is, would you believe it, the final Paddlecast of the series. Thank you for joining us so far. I've had a wicked time. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. It's been so good. We've had such a great bunch of guests from all parts of our community, and we've covered things around mental health, environment and pollution, increasing participation for women and girls, competition, paddling pioneers, and access and accessibility. So look, I've loved it. It's really warmed my heart, and I hope it has warmed yours too, because it's been lovely for me. We really are a good bunch of people in this paddle sport community, and it makes me really feel nice to be able to bring this to you. So yeah, if you've missed any of the shows in any of this series, please don't forget you can just watch or listen to them all again via the British Canoeing website, and you can also head out to the British Canoeing Spaces on YouTube, Facebook, or wherever you get your podcasts from as well. It's all there for you. And if you're listening again or watching again, thank you so much for getting involved that way. It's really cool to have you along, and super grateful for that as well. So, hey, look, we're going to get straight into it, and welcome to everybody tuning in. Thank you for being here. I know it's a nice evening here in Nottingham in terms of weather, but I hope it's going to be a really nice evening with our guests tonight. So please, feel free to comment along the way, throw some questions, and just we'll see how we're going. We'll try and get to as many as we can along the way. But tonight we are going to go back to our roots with the Paddlecast, because we started off, kind of going along the Clear Access, Clear Waters campaign, and we kind of evolved. And now we're going back to talk about access, about the Countryside and the Rights of Way Act, which is sometimes called the Crow Act. We're going to be talking about trespassing and what next for access in the future. And I'm really, really pleased and really proud to have some really interesting guests on us with tonight. So we've got people from the British Mountaineering Council, the Ramblers, and the Outdoor Spaces Society. And we've also got a special guest appearance from one of our friends on the show, Nick Hayes, who was on the last season, who is going to be updating us about his work over the last 8 months since he was last on. So first of all, I'll just introduce the guests. So first of all, we've got Kate Ashbrook. And Kate, I've been looking into Kate. Sounds like an absolute legend, a real kind of pioneer who has dedicated her life to securing access to our countryside since the late 1950s. So from her early roots in the Dartmoor Preservation Society, Kate has been a president of the Ramblers and 3 times the chair. So she's currently the General Secretary of the Outdoor Spaces Society, or OSS, which is our oldest national conservation body. She's also involved with a whole host of other organizations locally and nationally. So I feel I'm pretty safe to say that there are very few people who have been so active on access in this country. So Kate, thank you so much for being here. You've been singled out as one of 20 of the most influential working class heroes in a new book of the same name. So it's super good to have you here, Kate. Well, welcome. And how are you doing tonight?
Oh, thank you. No, I'm fine. Can I just correct you? It's Open Spaces Society.
Oh, excuse me very much.
I'm not quite as old as you made out. I haven't been campaigning since the late 1950s. That would make me more ancient than I really am. So
that doesn't make sense now. I see it.
Doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't. Let's say the mid 70s, I think, might be a bit.
Okay. Yeah. No, my apologies. Fair enough. Okay. Well spotted, right. Because the maths just went straight above my head. So thank you very much. No, welcome. And next up, we've got Dr. Cath Flitcroft from the BMC, the British Mountaineering Council. And Dr. Flickroft is responsible for managing the BMC's relationship with the government and other countryside and recreational organisations. So she is often found lobbying hard for the rights of hill walkers and climbers and mountaineers. And she leads the BMC on policy and legislation issues affecting the cliff and the mountain environment, and is responsible for replying to numerous consultation documents in England and Wales. So really interested to have you here as well. And it also says she was once a champion athlete and has once, by her own admission, spent far too much time being in the wilderness. So, and another interesting fact, your PhD, Kath, I like it, is about peat bogs, which I think peat bogs are really very good. And so welcome very much, Catherine. How are you doing tonight? Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thanks, Etienne. Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you.
And I haven't said anything stupid or wrong about you, have I?
No, absolutely
Not
fine.
so far, you might say. Well done. No, well done, me. Thank you very much for being here. All right. And the next one, we've got Ali Hallas, who's Ramblers Policy and Advocacy Officer. So it's really good to have you here, Ali. Thank you so much. I also understand that you're a bit of a paddler as well, and I heard that you're based out in Croydon. What sort of paddling do you do when you get the chance, Ali?
Nervous paddling, I guess. No, I do a little bit of flat water, a little bit of very small white water.
All right. Oh, well, that's cool. That's all right. We're all starting on the way on canoeing. You can always get bigger. That's how it goes. But no, it's super good to have you all on here. And I'm just, really interested. And also, actually, Ali, when I was researching you, it seemed like you've got a lot of experience and kind of background in understanding the impact of us on soil and water. Is that kind of your sort of science background there as well?
Yeah. Before joining the Ramblers, my main areas were contaminated land assessment and water quality.
Okay. So yes, good person to have on this show as well. So obviously the canoeists and paddle sport community very interested in that sort of thing as well. So really great. Thank you so much for being here. So yeah, I think first of all, we're going to get chatting and we're just going to see where we find ourselves. But it's really good to have you on and thank you so much. So first of all, Kate, I just thought I'd come in with you and start. As I said before this show, I've looked into a bit of your history and found out what you've been up to. And it's just incredible, all the things you've been involved in and all the campaigning you've done. I just wondered if you would mind sort of telling, us all here how you got started on this and what has kind of driven you all this time.
I got started. I was a 10-year-old who went riding on Dartmoor for a riding holiday and absolutely loved it. But I loved the horses more than the landscape at that stage. But I kept going back and the landscape began to speak to me. And by the time I was about 17, I just had fallen in love with Dartmoor. I knew it was threatened. I knew they were proposing reservoirs and that there was all sorts of, the military were training there. It was being bashed around. And I met this wonderful person called Sylvia Sayer, Lady Sayer. And she was 50 years older than me, but we became such good friends. And she kind of took me under her wing and taught me about campaigning by doing it. She gave me the opportunities. So I went to university at Exeter to be near Dartmoor, to be near her. And I went to public inquiries while I was at Exeter. I'm afraid I, didn't do my studies as well as I might because I got carried away with going to fight the military at the military inquiry, and cross-examine generals about unexploded bombs on Dartmoor. And I just did it by, copying her. And she gave me those opportunities. And then I became involved in the Open Spaces Society. I got onto the committee. I went to a Ramblers AGM. I got onto their committee and I just carried on campaigning. So I've been incredibly fortunate to have a mentor who just showed me what to do, really. And I thought, I've got to be like her. I mustn't be afraid. I've just got to do it. And so, I was courageous because she enabled me to be, really.
And I've noticed, reading this a very serious kind of thread through a lot of what you've done is this kind of idea of courage and really kind of going out and pushing your comfort zones. And would you see that as something that you've actively done, or is that something that you will almost like learn from this Lady Sayer?
Well, I suppose I learned it from her, but also if you're going to achieve what you want to achieve, you've just got to go for it. And you might be the only person who's speaking out for something, but if you think it's right, then you do it. And that's kind of the philosophy that I've followed. So there have been occasions when I've done things rather on my own, but and I haven't, I certainly don't always win by any means, but that's the kind of policy I've followed, really.
Oh, great credit to you. It really kind of sings out and it's really clear, and everything I looked at is really, really very touched by that kind of commitment and that clarity they have. And I was interested, the Countryside and Rights of Way Act, which we're going to talk a little bit about later, but that was a major kind of milestone in the history of, access to the land. And looking back at all the successes that you had personally, I know you were involved in that. Was the Countryside and Rights of Way Act kind of like the highlight, or there have been other things that you're kind of particularly proud of in all your grafting over these years?
Well, most of the things that I'm proud of are the little things, actually. The paths saved from diversion, or obstructions removed. And the Countryside and Rights of Way Act was a great achievement, but as we'll come on to say, I'm sure it's not, it didn't give us everything, and we know it didn't give us access to water. So it was important because it kind of reversed the situation with landowners, so that landowners could no longer say, get off my land, if you were on mapped open country. So that was good, but it was only a partial achievement. But the things that I'm particularly proud of, I guess, are getting the Van Hoogstraten footpath open by taking East Sussex County Council to court, and really persisting through a lot of legal action there, and certainly I did that with the Ramblers very much. But when it came to the court action, I did that, that was my thing. So, and I look at that, and then, there's fun things like marching through the marquee at Henley Regatta when they put the marquee over the a footpath, and I thought, right, I'm going to exercise my rights to walk this footpath on the Sunday of the regatta, when they're all quaffing champagne, and eating caviar. There I go through in my rucksack and shorts. And they said, if you persist in doing this, we'll throw you in the river. But I had a cameraman with me, so I said, okay, but keep filming, because this will be assault. So, that was all fun, really. And they didn't put the marquee over the footpath again. So, lots of little battles which are fun to look back on, but also I can feel satisfied. And people often say, oh, it's so negative what you do, but actually I think saving something is really positive. It's a really positive thing. So I look at paths that are still where they should be, because of battles I've fought, and I feel really pleased, or bits of countryside which haven't been messed up by something. And so it's really nice to be able to look at that. But there's loads of battles I've lost. So, don't think that I'm all that successful, because it's, plenty lost.
Well, yeah, you win some and you lose some, as the saying goes, but it sounds like you've been involved in is it the Van Hoogstraten?
Yeah, that was the footpath.
That seems to be like quite, there's a picture of you with the big bolt cutters cutting through it, because it sounded like this guy was really a kind of nasty piece of work, and you guys kind of, well, you personally took him to court, but the overall campaign was successful. And I mean, I can sense that must have been very intimidating when you set out to do that. And do you kind of?
No, well, it wasn't, because you see, I lived a long way away. It was the local people who were afraid and who didn't want to do anything. Even the police, were very reluctant. But because I lived somewhere away, it was much easier for me to pursue this court action. So I wasn't afraid of him, but I know he was a really nasty piece of work. He probably still is. I mean, he's still around, isn't he? But he formed this company so that actually we were having to take a company to court rather than the individual. But yeah, no, that was a long battle and a complicated one, but really worth pursuing, and people still remember it today and say, we remember that case, and we joined the Ramblers because of that case. So that's really nice.
Oh, great credit to you. And I just want to say how grateful I am, because, I think yes, I identify a lot with what you're saying. And, that kind of, as I say, I just think that it's clear that you can't even make this joke without sounding like an idiot. You're walking the walk and walking the talk that you do as well, because, it's so, it's wonderful. So thank you. I'm going to just quickly speak to Kath, if that's all right. So Kath, the British Mountaineering Council, I guess they're involved with mountaineering and climbing, all of those things, but I'd be interested if you could tell us a little bit about what they do and kind of what your involvement is with them a little bit more, please.
Yeah, well, it's quite a big question, Etienne, in terms of, it's impossible to cover everything here in terms of what we do. It's so wide ranging, but I'll try and give you a bit of a flavour in terms of what the access and conservation team do. So we're a team of 5, and my colleagues Rob and Alvin in particular work on negotiating access on the ground to crags for climbing, and they've had some real success over the years. So each year, for example, working in partnership with our team of access volunteers on the ground, we agree seasonal climbing restrictions for Schedule 1 cliff nesting birds, and also birds that are locally rare. So peregrines.
So protect the areas when they are when they've got nesting birds in. Is that what?
Yeah. So peregrines love nesting on a climbing route. It's a well-known thing. And things like ravens, which are sort of locally rare, and ring ouzels. So yeah, and this year, for example, we've had loads of reports of new pairs that are nesting on crags, or that pairs that haven't nested for a long time. And so we're kind of currently investigating these because they're sort of nesting at the moment. So that keeps that team pretty busy. Unfortunately, because of COVID as well, we have actually lost some access to some privately owned crags, particularly during lockdown. some of the quieter crags were more popular than they've ever been. You know, people starting to kind of climb in the local area, understandably, but unfortunately, yeah, we have lost a bit of access. So, for example, Becker Banks Crag in Yorkshire, it's on privately owned land. More people were turning up than ever before, and the landowner just wasn't happy with it. So, so yeah, not all good news. But yeah, so that's part of what we do. We've also got land management. We own and manage 12 crags. And myself and my colleague Eben, we do the sort of policy and advocacy side of the work. So in the past, I've been involved with the passage of the Marine and Coastal Access Act. I've been trying to influence the Agriculture Act and the new police crime sentencing and courts bill that's going through at the moment. So the sort of dry stuff, but that does have an impact on, you know, where people can go and what they can do. So yeah, and at the moment in Wales, the Wales Access Reform Programme has been taking up quite a bit of time. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the recommendations that they're due to announce soon. And yeah, more recently, our efforts have been kind of concentrated on getting some good practice messages out there post lockdown, messages out to the wider public and our members, really. So we've done a whole series, a Respect the Wild series on leave no trace when you wild camp, leave no trace when you're van camping, how to poo like a pro.
Oh, very important.
Yeah. We've got a Hills to Oceans litter picking campaign. Obviously, we're giving out litter pickers free of charge and compostable bags. And we've got a No More Barbecues campaign as well, which, yeah, obviously people don't understand the significance of taking a disposable barbecue onto a moorland setting. Yeah, the number of wildfires that we see, particularly in the Peak District, it's just phenomenal. So trying to get the message out there, and we're calling on governments to make the use of disposable barbecues on open moorland a criminal offence. So yeah, that's a kind of real, you know, light brush across all the stuff that we do in the access and conservation world at the BMC. It's quite wide ranging.
It's amazing. I mean, it sounds, you know, so much crossover here, right? Because, you know, a lot of these good practices, these stewarding of the, you know, the stewarding of the land or the water as we're talking about, you know, is so important. And I guess, you know, the canoeing and kayaking community must overlap massively together. You know, I was really, really interested in climbing before I became a canoeist, and I'm a bit scared of heights, really, like a lot of people. But are you a climber yourself, Kath?
I have climbed, but I think I've done it less and less over the years because, yeah, possibly like you, when I finish a climb, I'm actually just grateful to be alive, not the fact that I've improved, you know, my moves. I like to take a crag by surprise when I climb it. I don't tell anyone I'm going to do it.
Oh, I see. No, I mean, look, what you've said there, you know, it sounds like it's quite complicated. It sounds quite sometimes challenging because, you know, you're trying to balance interests and also dealing with some quite complicated piece of legislation. So is there are you a bit nerdy around that as well? Or is it the sort of thing that you're kind of just, you know, I guess it must be very complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a bit nerdy. You need to know things a bit, you know, a little bit about occupiers' liability and, yeah, the Crow Act and, yeah, various sections of various acts. But that's good. I've always been a bit nerdy, so I'm quite comfortable with that.
And so I've heard that you arrange walks with MPs as part of the all-party group on mountaineering. And that sounds like kind of interesting because getting people to see with their own eyes and maybe feel with their own feet, you know, the places that we're talking about, that sounds really cool. And do you think that you know, helps I suppose that you must see a different side because we see politicians on the TV and we think probably all sorts of preconceptions around them. But what happens when you're taking them out? You know, I guess, do you take them climbing or just out on the crags and out?
We've done both actually. We do invite MPs who've particularly got a good crag, you know, or a popular crag or popular climbing area in their constituency. Yeah, we have offered to take them climbing, and yeah, quite a few have taken us up on it. Yeah, and the walk we've been doing now, well, the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Mountaineering is 10 years old this year. So, yeah, we've done a walk most years when things like Brexit and COVID haven't got in the way, and it has been a really good opportunity to kind of sort of in a soft touch way lobby MPs and talk to them about various issues. So the one we've got planned this year is in walking up Kinder Scout, and we're going to talk to them about the work of Moors for the Future and the peatland restoration work there, and the contribution that's making to the whole kind of climate emergency story, and the importance of carbon sequestration and all that. So no, it's really, really good. It's quite a difficult and challenging time to kind of talk to MPs at the moment for obvious reasons. So actually I'm hoping in October, when the walk's planned, we'll have millions of them joining us, because they'll all want to do something a bit different.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's really interesting, isn't it, to get these MPs into this place, and they can to sort of do that sort of I guess experiencing things is the way people learn things, and it sounds that sounds a really good idea. And I don't even know whether or not British Canoeing, we should definitely take some MPs out canoeing at some point and go and some small white water.
It'd be brilliant if we had the opportunity to do a whole day of, all of us could do with a group of, we could take them for a walk, take them for a paddle, take them up a mountain.
Have a camp. Yeah, we could have a camp. It would be cool.
Go wild camping in a group.
See who turns up though, because it could be a bit the fireside chat. The kind of campfire chat might be. We'd have to be careful what subjects we veered onto and stuff. Oh, it could be awkward, but it could also be quite fun. No, that's cool. No, it's really interesting, and I suppose I'm also really interested in the British Mountaineering Council, because I know that your sport has got that connection to the environment, like canoeing does, really completely connected, and people noticing the changes and have this stake in it. And I'm also interested in sequestration, the carbon, the way that carbon gets soaked up by these peatlands and stuff. So that's sounds like really good. And is that a big part for you as well, the environmental side of things? Is that kind of increasing in interest, I suppose?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as I guess as an example of that is we launched the climate project last year, and we're not calling it an offsetting scheme for various reasons, but actually we are offering the chance for our members to support a climate change project, and that climate change project is through the work of Moors for the Future and their peatland restoration work. And it's phenomenal, the response we've had already, and we've raised over £30,000 without even trying. And so I think, when more people are kind of buying travel insurance and thinking about their footprint, and actually, particularly with COVID, I think people have reconnected a lot with their own, what's on their doorstep and the mountains, and they do value them. And so the whole sort of climate project, climate story and appreciating the outdoors has kind of come together. So, I think people they do want to preserve and conserve the places that they love accessing, and which give us that room to breathe and so on. So there's a definite connection there.
Well, thank you. No, that sounds really, and I'm really looking forward. I need to speak to some more people in the British Mountaineering Council, so I'll be happy to chat to you. But thank you very much. And Ali, I thought it'd be really interesting just to kind of ask a little bit, so we'll talk a little bit about the right to roam, and I think that it's interesting. I don't know. I suppose I'm curious as to what you've heard so far, Ali, about things you've talked about. Where does that connect in with the work that you're doing?
So the Ramblers were really involved in the Right to Roam campaign. They campaigned over decades to get the freedom to roam in the open spaces, and that's a really big part of my job. So the Ramblers is part membership organisation. We do a lot of lead walks. We do individual routes for walking. And we're part charity and campaigning organisation, and that's the bit that I sit in, a bit like Kate and Kath. And my two areas are open access and countryside protection. So I look after anything that comes across our desk, really, to do with the Crow Act. And at the moment, a big part of that is the creation of the England Coast Path. So it's quite unusual. It's a path all the way around the coastline of England. Wow. But it's actually a path made out of open access land, so freedom to roam land. So it's slightly different to all the other footpaths across the country. And it has what's called spreading room, areas of freedom to roam land at the coast. So what's brilliant about it, one of the brilliant things about it, is that it's really bringing the freedom to roam down into the lowlands, because a lot of it is uplands, it's in the mountains and the moors, and this is areas of beach and headland, places that anybody can get to and go and explore.
Cool. So you're sort of saying like you've got the path, but there's a sort of areas either side of the path that you're allowed to just go and look around in, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's mainly between the path and the water. So it depends what the land use is, because obviously we've got a really complex coastline. There are all sorts of things along the coast, like ports, which you just can't wander through because that would be dangerous. But, you know, lovely areas that people would like to walk on, the headlands, you know, around and about on the coast. There are areas where you can just go and explore.
And that's, I mean, exploring is one of my favorite things. And I suppose, the headlands where you just see, I want to go there. And it's just kind of sad sometimes that you can't kind of do that. And I just wanted to, you know, interested to hear about this, the Crow Act and, you know, what does it do and what does it allow us, you know, what does it do for us? You know, people, I've only just learning about it, and what's kind of its disappointments, or what does it not allow us to do in your view?
Okay, well, let's not start with the disappointments.
Let's start with the good
things. The brilliant things about the Crow Act is that it allows you to wander off path. So there are in England, Wales, 140,000 miles of rights of way, which is great. You can walk along the path. You can walk, you know, through fields, wherever the paths go, but you can't really wander off it. Whereas in the open access areas that are mapped by Crow, you can really connect to the landscape. You can take whatever line you want to, as long as you do no damage. If you want to go and find out what the view's like over the other side of the hill, you can go and find out. If you want to look at a particular area of, you know, plants or whatever you're interested in, you have the flexibility to use that land in a really different way.
And so, so that sounds, so you've got these areas that we can, you know, do what we want within, you know, with care and kindness. But what are the things that you wish we could do, or what do you think that things that it doesn't do for us, this Crow Act?
So we've talked a bit about the uplands versus the lowlands. So what Crow did brilliantly was open up some of the uplands where there weren't actually that many rights of way. So people were really struggling to get onto that land and explore it. It's not as common to have access land near to where people live in towns and cities, which is a real shame, because that's a freedom that everybody should have to be able to explore, you know, land that is suitable for them to go and enjoy. So there are, you know, there's land in the lowlands that would be really nice to open up for people, sort of, you know, woodlands and watersides and those types of areas. And also there's a category of land called downland in the Crow Act, which was about really grasslands. And the real detail of the Act meant that actually they're really small areas that people can explore that ended up being mapped. And they might not fit together properly, so they're isolated pockets that you can't really get to. And they're sometimes, you know, really steep and really rugged, and not, you know, they're not really places that you can walk easily. So it would be great to have another look at that and see whether we could find other suitable areas for people to go and explore them.
And just expand it to let people, because, you know, this last year, I guess people, when they've had the chance, have just loved getting out into the outdoors.
Exactly.
And I guess it's been booming. So Kath, I read in the news recently about the news, you know, to criminalize trespass with the policing, crime, sentencing, and I can't remember all the letters of it, that bill. And obviously, you know, this is going to affect paddlers as well. What do you think it means for the countryside? This, you alluded to it earlier, and what do you think we need to do about it? And who do you think what do you think? What's your thoughts on that? I think is probably my first question.
Well, I think the main aim of the whole bill is really to criminalise gypsy and traveller communities' way of life. But actually, the bill also contains kind of numerous threats to the right to peaceful protest and access to the countryside, as well as a host of other kind of expansive police powers. So it is potentially a real attack on our civil liberties. So the outdoor organisations in particular are concerned with Part 4 of the bill, which is unauthorised encampments, which would introduce measures to create a new offence of trespass by residing on land without consent residing on land without consent in or with a vehicle. And there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of the terminology used in the bill and the wording. I mean, what does that actually mean, a vehicle? Does that mean actually you're going to be penalised if you sleep in a vehicle? Or actually, could you park your vehicle and walk 5 miles away and wild camp and therefore be penalised? It's very uncertain. There's a lot of uncertainty. I think the bill would also allow the police to act on suspicion by an officer that they might also intend to reside, and give police the power to confiscate a vehicle. So potentially, the wording and what's proposed in the legislation could give landowners who might wish to make the countryside a hostile place, for those genuinely seeking to enjoy it, to actually do so, and be another thing for them to say no access. And it's a real threat, and it is off-putting. People, it's all, people enjoy and want to come to the countryside, and yet this is another thing that's potentially could put off a lot of people. There was also a recent petitions debate on the matter, and I don't think it did very much to relay any of our concerns, unfortunately. The Minister of State for Crime and Policing, Kit Malthouse, his response was really, it was rubbish. And actually, I think he did say something about a boat in his response. So he was very dismissive of the concerns, and he didn't really offer us any sort of real assurances on issues such as trespass and wild camping, and whether that's part and parcel of what it means. So yeah, there's a Trespass Coalition, which is a group of outdoor organisations, and we are all kind of pulling together, and we're looking at that group is being driven actually by Guy Shrubsole and Nick Hayes of the Right to Roam campaign, and it's a great group. I think ideally we think the best course of action is just to get rid of parts 3 and part 4 of the bill entirely, but at the moment we are kind of failing to do that. At the moment we are working on some potential amendments that we think could benefit everybody, including the gypsies and traveller community, and help mitigate some of its worst impacts. So yeah, it's all about unintended consequences of part 4 really, and what that might mean for trespass and wild camping, and just people enjoying the countryside and not really realizing that they shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. And it's a horrible piece of legislation.
Well, look, and I'm scared of it as well. It's really not cool. They're rushing it far too fast. But I've got a really good question for Kate in just a moment. But I thought, as you mentioned, Nick and Guy, 2 guests who were on the last series of the Paddlecast, I actually had a little interview with Nick Hayes, the illustrator of the book of Trespass that Guy Shrubsole was writing. We caught up with him, and it's going to be available as a little side podcast and side video at some point, but I think we're going to just play that in now because it'd be a good time to kind of see where he's been at this last few months. So I think we'll get that played now with any luck. Here we go. So yeah, no, it's good to have you on, and I think it's like we're just like trying to catch up with you and get a little bit of an update about what you've been up to. So yeah, kind of how is the campaign going? Because last June, you guys were really stoked and really looking forward, and I guess we've still been under lockdown. It must have still been quite hard but if you're tell us how things are going.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's exactly what we were hoping for and more really. Like since June. The Book of Trespass came out, and that gave us a massive bump in publicity. We got about 15,000 people signing up to our website, rightoroam.org.uk. And they've signed up really so that we can keep them informed as to what our plans are, both on a political level, but also kind of a social level. Because we've realised pretty quick that, number one, I think before we take this to the halls of Westminster, we're really going to have to even raise the conversation of access. Like, people just don't know how little of the land en masse, in total, that we're denied access to. And that applies, of course, to rivers as well. So, yeah, the book came out. I guess that caused a load of publicity. We've been working behind the scenes with all sorts of, the more official organisations. XR came to us to ask us to help plan a trespass to celebrate the Kinder Trespass, which was actually, whilst we're recording this weekend is when it happened. And we designed an Everybody Welcome Here sign with a little kind of cute message: as long as you respect that this is Mother Nature's home, feel free to wander, you have the right to roam. And a letter to the landowners, because number one, really what we want is this conversation. about access. Like landowners very rightly say, well, what about litter? What about sheep worrying? What about those sort of doggy doo-doo bags that people hang off hawthorn hedges for no apparent good reason? And these are conversations that we want to have. But so fundamentally, the next step is to really link access to nature with access to our own mental and physical and spiritual health. Like, when the NHS was founded, the right to roam was also kind of mooted as a possible kind of sister philosophy to the NHS. Why just create this welfare state to catch people when they fall, when they're really sick? Why not create an architecture to allow people kind of to autonomously regulate their own mental health through and physical health through access to nature?
No, I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? Where it's when you start to look into these things, you kind of find, well, you come across these sorts of stories, and it is challenging. It makes people think, and there's bound to be some reaction, and then I think it's up to us all to kind of just sit with that for a moment. And well, I don't know, it's not up to everyone. I would say, I think I find it, my challenge is to try and sit with it and hear it and try and think about it. And it's interesting what we're talking about, because I guess it's something that you've also probably had some thoughts about, is that there's this new policing, crime, sentencing and courts bill that's being tried. Well, it seems like it's being pushed through Parliament at a great speed, which would actually criminalise trespass. And I'm sure you've got some some opinions about that, and it'd be interesting because I guess that's a very serious, potentially very serious step in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. I mean, when the Book of Trespass came out, there was some cautionary notes from members of the Gypsy Roma traveller community saying, well, hang on, like, are you just trying to make trespass trendy? That's going to cause some kickback for us. But of course, we'd already launched the petition to basically question the criminalisation of trespass, and it got its 134,000 signatures, proving that across England, people are very concerned with the kind of human rights of already very marginalised group, which is the travelling community. On the 19th of April, we got our debate in Parliament, which is triggered after you get 100,000 signatures. And on the one hand, a lot of MPs stood up and talked about how important our right to protest is and our right to, engage with the countryside, referring to the Kinder Trespass on several occasions. But like me and Guy responded to it very differently. I think he's very enthusiastic about the coalition between, this bill that is lumping together basically the rights of people to protest and the rights, sort of infringing the rights of travellers, has basically lumped together a load of resistance. But we're concerned that that there's so many abuses of our human rights.
So many threads, tangled up together.
Yeah, that we might win some, but because they've baked them all together, if they throw the people a little bit of meat, then there might be some concessions, but it's very likely they're not going to be for the GRT community. There seems to be a massive amount of confusion as to what, like from the Conservatives themselves, as to who this bill applies to. If you're criminalising trespass with intent to reside, the specifications are you have to turn up on a vehicle. And both the vehicle can be impounded and you're liable for a 2.5 grand fine or 3 months in prison. But even Kit Malthouse, who was leading the debate, the Conservative minister, couldn't define whether a kayak was a vehicle or not. He said, "Well, I'm very sure that a kayak isn't a vehicle." A kayak is a vehicle. So if you're camping by the side of the river on a kayak trip longer than a day, which I've done many times, you're now going to have your kayak stolen off you and be criminalised.
So yeah, that was a really interesting. And there's so much more of that interview for people to catch up on. At some point, we'll get that out there. But I was wondering, Kate, you've campaigned such a long time, and we're talking about this trespass legislation. Do you think this is kind of just going back in time and undoing a lot of the good work that you've struggled for, or and the progress that you've made? How worried are you about this bill?
Well, very worried, because it's so uncertain. I think Kath explained very well, the unintended consequences. So government says it's not going to capture innocent walkers and all that, but the fact is that it could, because of the definitions, the sloppy wording, all that. We don't know as it goes through Parliament. Will we get more amendments that actually send it even further in the wrong direction? That's perfectly possible. But also it does create this climate, and it will embolden landowners to say, get off my land, and to close themselves in and to close people out. All that, because actually the walking public, I think, is quite nervous about doing the wrong thing. I know it's a long time ago, but in about 1988, the Countryside Commission did a survey and found that 88% of people in the countryside were actually worried about going off the path and doing something wrong. And I suspect that percentage hasn't changed that much. People really are quite worried about it. And so they're going to be even more worried, and it's not going to help people's confidence at all. So I just think it is a huge worry.
Go on,
as
Ali.
Kath said earlier, this just when we're coming out of lockdown, a really difficult year, and people have felt better with a connection to nature. Now is the point where we need to be making it easier and more welcoming for people to be out there and to feel comfortable in the outdoors. And you're not going to feel comfortable if you think that somebody's going to be, criminalising your, using legislation against you.
Mm.
And I would also add that the Crow Act is very kind of poorly understood amongst your average Joe blogs, and the legislation is different in Scotland and potentially going to be different in Wales. And this is another thing that's going to just confuse and complicate the matter. And if people are genuinely thinking, I can't do that, I think we're just going to end up sticking to footpaths all the time and being really worried about doing anything like stepping off the path and exploring and adventure and all those sorts of things. And yeah, there's a real risk there that what we're actually able to do is getting narrower.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because I think Nick referred to it in the clip there. There's this coalition. It's really bringing together an awful lot of people, and I think that it's interesting because we're trying to bring this coalition to look after water and rivers, because we believe, there's some comments here. So I'm just going to bring Karen Johnston in there if I can show. Yeah. Oh no, I just pressed it myself. Excuse me. There we go. I'll do it once more. Go on, Mark. You can do it. There we go. So yes, and it says she's saying basically all water users coming together makes it better for everyone. It's a shame that there's a bit of division across all the other water sports. And John Tuwen, I don't know if I've said that right as well. He's saying there about the fact that we all want good rivers. The anglers, the historic, enemies of paddle sports. I really think we've got common cause in so many of these things now, because the pandemic has shown people so strongly how much good it does them to be outside. Some of these simpler things in life have really helped people so much, and it seems like this is exactly going in the opposite direction that what we need to. And I'm scared about it. It's worrisome, and it just seems to be completely backwards. I just wonder if any of you kind of what's the have you any of your organizations got specific plans to engage with this act, or this proposed act, should I say, or is it still kind of all being worked out, because it's all quite new, isn't it?
Well, the coalition is very good, and actually it's terrific to be working with organizations that we haven't worked with before. The gypsy traveller sector, homeless sector, it's really interesting. And so we are wanting to get rid of those two parts of the bill, 3 and 4, but we're also at the same time going to work on amendments, and some of them will work on together, and some of them I think will. The access bodies are getting together to talk about access type amendments, and we've done a bit of that. So we're certainly developing our plans.
But we are developing our plans together. So I think, you know, it's a united front, and we've got numbers and organisations, fairly hefty organisations behind it. So, yeah, we can but try, and fingers crossed, you know, some it'll work eventually.
Yeah, and I think, you know, fingers crossed is great, but, you know, it sounds like you're out there doing, you know, getting it working stuff. And I think, you know, the paddle sport community are bound to want to kind of get involved with this as well, because it's like, it's just basically not cool, is as simply as I see it. Don't want to use imprecise language, but I think that's, and I suppose I guess we're coming slightly towards the end of this Paddlecast, and also the end of the series. But I just wonder, for all three of you, if I go around one at a time, what you think kind of is the future? Where is this whole access to the countryside kind of issue going, and what does your kind of vision? What would you like to see, and what do you want to happen? And maybe I'll start with you, Ali. You know, how do you see, what would you like, and what's your vision of the future here?
Wow. Okay. I suppose I put it into two parts. One is about equality, because at the moment, I mean, our recent research shows that if you have a lower income, you're far less likely to be able to go out into a quality green space, that's just not right, is it? So we need to tackle that. We need to try and make sure that everybody is within a few minutes walk of a green space, so they can just go and unwind. And the other bit for me is all about connectivity. It's about seeing how all of our different types of access, and it is complicated, but all of the different types of rights of way and open access land and everything else fits together, because people just want to go walking or you know, paddling or horse riding, whatever you really enjoy. You want to be able to do it easily, and for your route to be enjoyable, and not to find obstructions, and, you know, all of those sorts of things. So to have a really well looked after, well maintained, well connected access network would be fantastic.
That sounds good. You know, simplicity, absolutely. You know, canoeing, I'm not going to say anything about the paddle sport community, but simpler is better, right? You know, it's got to be good. And I love that idea of that equality as well, you know, just to get, so we can all get out there, and people can get out there from all places of the country. That's wonderful to think. And whoever you are, get access to this green and blue therapy that we've talked about so many episodes. Kath, I'm wondering what your thoughts are. What's your kind of vision, and how you'd like to see this, you know, this whole thing develop?
Yeah, similar to Ali, really. It'd be lovely, wouldn't it, to sort of start in the lowlands and have that freedom to move to the woodlands, and then to the water, and then up to the mountain, and, you know, have a real sense of place, and be able to move across the landscape and feeling, you know, free, and you're not kind of governed by rules and regulations and this, that, and the other. And I think we've got a lot to learn from what's happening in Scotland, and their Scottish Outdoor Access Code, and the right, you know, that's a kind of human rights approach to land rights and responsibilities, and it's governed by a code and sort of sensible sort of personal behaviour. But I think for me, the challenges that we face really are kind of getting the landowning bodies on side, and at the moment, political will. Unfortunately, it's does feel like we're kind of banging our head against a brick wall at the moment. I think those two are the key challenges. But yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, just the freedom to kind of to roam, you know, that would be amazing.
Well, I tell you what, I think 2021 is a year of great potential for all sorts of changes, because I think, you know, there's a pent up energy for all sorts of things. And I think, you know, banging your head against a brick wall, I'm sad to hear you saying that, because I wonder this year could be the year that all sorts of things happen, and the walls could come tumbling down, because I actually think that, you know, these things are galvanizing people. We're starting, you know, there's a lot of energy to go somewhere right now.
I would absolutely agree, Etienne, but I think, like, the government on the one hand with the COVID is saying, you know, access to the countryside is a priority, but then you've got the police powers bill, and it doesn't work. It's like people aren't talking to each other, and it doesn't add up. So yeah, chip away.
Indeed. And Kate, what about you? I mean, you've been around the block. You've been in a few tussles. What's your kind of vision, and how do you see this maybe this year, and maybe going forward? What would you like to see how it goes?
Well, I mean, I certainly want to see all our paths in good order, and easy to use, and all the paths that ought to be on the official map put on the map. 1st of January 2026 is a cut-off date when you can no longer claim historic routes. Well, we need to get that abolished, that cut-off date. But even so, I'd like to see all those paths recorded. So we had a really good network of paths that people felt confident about, but also much greater freedom to roam. And as Kath says, what about woodland? What about along rivers? You know, it's ridiculous. We can't walk along all our rivers, and we ought to be able to. And then you ought to be able to, you know, dip in at any point with your kayak and paddle away. So we certainly want to see that. And the Scottish access, yes, you know, they say world-class access, and it is absolutely fascinating. But I have to say, in Scotland, they are now realising that they missed out on having official paths, and they're now trying to get the local authorities to carry out their duty of producing core paths. So I think paths and access together are a really important mix, because some people do actually like to follow a trail and other people like to wander from it. So in a way, the England Coast Path is a fine example of that. You know, it gives you both. So, you know, let's have a lot more of that. But facing reality, you know, it's going to be a fight, but I think we're all up for a fight. So we'll do what we can, and we'll do it together. And it'd be great to have the paddle community with us, you know, all fighting together.
Hey, that's lovely words, rousing, and I absolutely agree. I think this is such an important thing. We these are the times, and I'm super grateful for those words at the end there, Kate. And you know, Kath and Ali, thank you so much for being on. Look, I'd love to talk to you some more and find out. I'm sure the adventures and the challenges that you've got ahead. You know, they're going to be tough, but you know, this is really good to. I'm super grateful for you being here, and I just want to say thank you to everybody for being on. I think it's just really great for coming here, you know, everyone coming together, getting together, being this community, learning about some of these issues, and it's been really quite educational for me, and I hope it's been interesting for a lot of you out there. And you know, let's keep pushing on. So yeah, that's it for the Paddlecast Series 2. I hope you've enjoyed being with us. Thank you so much to all the guests who've been all the way through. They've been wonderful. You know, it's been so nice. I've enjoyed my Thursday evenings, you know, so much. And for all the questions, the love and the good vibes coming through on the comments, sorry not to be able to get to all of them. I also just got to say a very massive thank you to Mark Shardlow, who is the producer of the Paddlecast and who does the behind the scenes thing, and there's also a whole lot of team doing bits and pieces to help make the show such a pleasure to be a part of. So much love to them. So yeah, I just want to say thank you once again. If you've got any feedback on the series, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear your ideas. But for now, I will say goodbye. Hopefully see you on a river or out there at some point. But all the very best. Have a good summer. Stay safe, and see you soon. Much love to you all. Bye for now.